I'll begin this with a short prayer. Please join me if you know it. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhikamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you dignitaries and delegates. I want to start off by talking about my experience in Hindu Students Council. I graduated college back in 2010. Ever since then, I've been volunteering on the board of WHC, and I've been doing a lot of work on the ground, in terms of grassroots engagement with our student population. And unfortunately, the majority of Hindu youth are quite disconnected from their heritage and from their spirituality. They refer to themselves as spiritual but not religious, not really understanding what that even means. They have a kind of shame with identifying as Hindu. It's very unfortunate when you want to bring up something of that nature and they kind of shy away from it. So this overall climate is what I've encountered when I talk about the kind of the Hindu youth diaspora. Us over here, we're very different. We're actually engaged in a meaningful way with the tradition. But I would say that the majority of young Hindus are really actually actively distancing themselves. So this is an issue that HSC has been tackling specifically on campuses, because that's probably where that happens the most. You're not being forced to sit in a place listening to things that you don't understand. I'm talking about the general temple experience, which is what actually pushed me away from the tradition until I rediscovered it through Vedanta and through yoga. So how do we strengthen this? How do we look at kind of the overall picture, the source, the roots, and how do we remedy this situation? We heard today during the plenary session earlier various remarks about the history of our tradition and where we came from, what ended up happening to us. I'm talking about the process of colonization, the process of forgetting our true nature, whether that true nature is Atma, being one with Brahman, or our true nature as a civilization, as a society that was one of the most major contributors to the world, whether it's economically, socially, creatively, educationally. So because of where we are, we need a new way of kind of reconnecting to those roots and re-realizing who we are now, who we used to be, but who we can be. So I think that process is deeply emotional, psychological, in addition to being spiritual. So our spiritual traditions basically teach us that everything is one, that there is no such thing as duality, that the infinite being, that infinite consciousness pervades everything, and that we are that ultimate reality. And yet, we act like Arjuna acted at the beginning of the Gita, where he threw down his arms and said, "Krishna, please, I'm just going to run away and not do anything. I'm going to retreat to spiritual life." And Krishna enlightened Arjuna through the course of the Gita that spiritual life is essentially living fully, powerfully in the world. So how do we reconcile this idea of, yes, everything is one and everything is perfect as it is already, so why do anything about it? And obviously the real life situations that we encounter, as Hindus especially. And for me, before, it was a very easy excuse to just run away and just make excuses for the issues that Hindus were facing. That someone else will take care of it, that it's somehow in this plan of oneness or whatever to kind of remove me from the equation. And that right there was the prevailing kind of personal state of weakness that I had to contend with. I had to realize that their backbone is available. Rising up for what you believe in, for what is true is available. And that actually started happening when I started meeting more people through HSC and being exposed to these ideas. So, so there are so many layers to strengthening your identity. And I think that ultimately we have to face that shame head on, and we have to learn, we have to really conceive of India's true nature and history and use that to build ourselves up. And that process is indeed a spiritual process on its own. To say that I am Hindu out loud to a group of people who perhaps, you know, would come from this place of stereotyping and prejudice. Parth mentioned 4 out of 5 Americans. So how would that feel, right? Do we have the guts, do we have the courage to make ourselves essentially vulnerable in that way? Do we have the ability to put ourselves out there and stand up for what we believe in, what our paths are? And so, can we say that, no, we don't worship cows, we revere them as our second mother because we drink their milk? Or can we talk about other criticisms, such as caste being a vertically structured hierarchy? No, in the Purusha Suktam, when it says that God's head is Brahmins and God's arms are Kshatriyas and the legs are Vaishyas and the feet are Shudras, in the Purusha Suktam, Purusha is lying down horizontally. It's a horizontally structured system of checks and balances. So can we learn this kind of stuff and can we turn it back around? And can we say it with pride, a healthy pride, not a like arrogant or overpowering kind of like negative type of pride, but a healthy pride. So I think that there are various reforms that need to happen in terms of our education structure. We need to learn more than just the stories that are taught in Balviar, but we need to learn how to combat these misconceptions that we are constantly hammered with. Parth also mentioned something very interesting: caste, cows, and curry is the prevailing conception of India today. So is there a way that we can take back control of that and change that? And of course, we need to be that change that we want to see. So can we put aside our shame, can we put aside our fear, and start moving towards that growth? So ultimately, this is a process of swadhyaya. You must have that spiritual self-study, but also the self-study of your psychology that prevents you from stepping up and stepping out in order to arrive at swarajya, which is self-rule. So I will conclude, as unfortunately my time seems over now, and we'll let our other wonderful panelists speak on this topic. So first, I would like to introduce Sushri Drishti May. She is the president of the National Hindu Students Forum in the UK. The NHSF was founded 27 years ago and is active in almost half of all universities in the UK. It reaches over 10,000 students annually through its activities. Drishti is passionate about the space that universities can provide for students to explore dharmic values and their identity during their formative years. A graduate of chemistry from the University of York and the Unilever Future Leaders Program, Drishti now works in technology at Unilever in the UK. So please give it up for Drishti.
Namaste, everyone. It is a huge honor to be with you all here today. And as with any honor or privilege, it is only right that I begin with a few acknowledgements and expressions of gratitude. I would first like to acknowledge the generations that came before us, our ancestors. Those that not only were a part of our history, but actively shaped it. and through the peaks and troughs of our shared history, held the flames of Hindu Dharma high above their heads, so that we may be here today. My dear elders, here in this very room, scattered across the conferences taking place today, and back at home. Our elders who have given their tan, man, dhan into carrying these very flames from the 20th to the 21st century, and who have nurtured us, the youth, because they see us as the future, and because of whom I stand before you today. To them, I say thank you. To the wonderful organising team, who for the last year or maybe more have given their absolute dedication, have navigated multiple time zones and given hundreds of hours to bring Swamiji's vision to life, the reality that we are experiencing right now. And on a personal note, to Nithika Ben Sharma, who's been a constant source of inspiration to me personally. To them all, I'd like to say thank you. And last but not least, my dear sisters and brothers here in this very room. You've travelled from all corners of the world to be here. And as I look across this room and I look at you, I'm filled with both pride and certainty. Certainty that a Hindu Renaissance is well and truly underway. So today I'd like to share an experience with you, one that I had not too long ago with my niece. So my niece, she's 12 years old, and by all means she's a very typical British Hindu girl. You know, every year she looks forward to Raksha Bandhan and all the pounds that she'll be able to grab off her brothers. She looks forward to Navratri and the new dresses she'll be gifted and the dance moves that she will learn when she goes to Garba. And every week she also enjoys that weekly trip to the mandir with Nana and Nani. So we were sat down one afternoon when I was visiting her in London, and she was telling me all about what she'd learned this year in school, and we were talking about the world religions. And what I'm about to say will be familiar to most people in this room, but please do indulge me for a moment. She first told me about Christianity. She told me Christianity was founded by Jesus Christ, that Christians go to the church, which is their place of worship. Their holy book is the Bible, and they believe in one God. She then told me about Islam, using a rather similar pattern. Islam was founded by Prophet Muhammad. Muslims go to the mosque, which is their place of worship. They go to the madrasa to learn about Islam. Their holy book is the Quran, and above all, they too believe in one God called Allah. She then told me about herself. She described that she belonged and believed in a religion called Hinduism. And whilst Hinduism has lots and lots of gods, there's ultimately one supreme God. She told me that the place of worship for Hindus is the mandir, and the holy book is the Bhagavad Gita. Now those are her words. Words that she has been taught to tell herself, but also words that she's been taught to tell others about herself. Words that she's been taught by her school, by her friends, by her parents, and her Samaj. Now, I'm seeing smiles because we recognize those words. Because you and I both have also been taught those very words. By our schools, by our friends, by our parents, and by our Samaj. And the question I'd like to ask us all here in this room today is if these words that we recognize, truly and accurately encapsulate what it means to be a Hindu today. Is it fair and is it right to translate a word such as Bhagavan to mean God? Is the Bhagavad Gita the holy book of the Hindus? And is my niece's identity simply a religious identity? My concern for my niece and Hindus just like her across the world is that she is utterly unable to express the rich inner reality that she experiences every day. And I fear that if she cannot give words to this reality, she will not be able to describe her Hindu identity. And if she and others like her cannot describe or articulate their Hindu identity, then I think we must ask the question, how do we articulate Hindu Dharma to the world? And I fear that if we cannot articulate these universal sacred values to the world, we will not only fail our Samaj, we will fail humanity. Now, just as I've shared my concerns with you, I must also share my hopes with you. So, in about 6 years or so, my niece will become 18, and she will most likely travel on to university. And there I would imagine, or no, rather I would expect, that she will join her local society of the National Hindu Students Forum. Otherwise we'll share words. And when she joins the National Hindu Student Forum, I would like to imagine that when that moment comes that she is invited to be part of an interfaith panel, that she will say yes and not defer to an external speaker. I would like to imagine that she will be able to accurately and confidently articulate how the notion of God is different within the dharmic traditions than it is within the Abrahamic faiths. I would like to imagine that she will be able to articulate the different qualities of bhaga that form the root of the word Bhagavan. I would like to imagine that she will be able to narrate and explain how science and dharma are inextricably linked, and how the cycle of reincarnation is not so different from the biogeochemical cycles we learn of in school. This is my hope for my niece, for myself, for us, and for Hindus globally. I would like to see her being able to own her identity and articulate it confidently to others. And for this gap between her inner experience and her vocabulary to get smaller each and every day. However, this hope that I've just shared with you will only remain a hope or a desire unless we choose to do something about it, unless we decide to act. And I'd like to ask ourselves that question. Can we act? Can we step up and own the narrative of our Hindu identity? Can we choose to present ourselves confidently as Hindus in every sphere of society? Can we own our identity without being caricatured or demonized as superstitious, as backwards, as fascists or Hindu extremists, or even as nationalists? Can we dismantle the framework that exists today, where the term Hindu is seen as a pejorative, but instead build a new framework where the term Hindu is seen as positive, aspirational, something that we can all take pride in? I would like to see my niece grow up in such a society, where she can own her identity, where she can articulate it. And now she might rightly ask me, how might she do this? And I would answer back with a question of my own. Is she prepared to commit herself wholly and completely to curating this identity? Can she commit herself to seriously studying Sanskrit? Can she use her way with words and become an extraordinary author, but in that process not lose her Hinduness, but instead come forward as an integrated whole? Can she pursue a career in finance, but not compromise or lose her sanskars, but instead create a new narrative of dharmic finance? Can she commit to public service and influencing policy without becoming a complete Anglophile? In every instance, can she commit to closing the gap between her professional life and the values that shape her? But before I can even ask my 12-year-old niece any of these questions, I must pause and ask them to myself. Can I do this? Can I commit myself wholly to this? And not just I. Can you? Can you do this? And if not you, then who? Dhanyavad. Namaste.
Thank you, Drishti, for that moving talk. I wish I had you in my family when I was that age to help me through those struggles. Next, I would like to introduce Shri Krishna Nageshan. He graduated from the University of Auckland, New Zealand, with a bachelor's degree in engineering and honors degree. He is currently working as a product development engineer at Fisher and Paykel Appliances. He is the National Secretary for New Zealand Hindu Students Forum. He is an organizing member and coordinator of various Hindu festivals and programs involving the wider community. He also organizes meditation workshops. He is working towards contributing to the Hindu resurgence. Murli?
Namaste. My name is Krishna Nageshan, and I am currently, as mentioned before, Secretary of New Zealand Hindu Students Forum. The topic of discussion which I'll be presenting today is commanding respect with Hindu identity. So to delve into this topic, it might be useful to have an idea of what is first of all Hindu identity. This is why it becomes such a hot discussion point. Different people perceive this matter in various ways. For some, it is how they cognize themselves. For others, it's the practices they follow. For others, how they perceive and cognize life and God. For some people, it's the knowledge base from which they generate wealth, arthashastra. For others, it's the background they use to heal and treat illnesses and diseases, Ayurveda, Siddha, Yoga. For others, it's about having a beautiful relationship and running an ideal household life. While for others, it is making a bold statement, saying that they are shouldering the responsibility for the world by taking sannyas. All of this, though they may seem to be polar opposites and far from each other, beautifully sit amongst each other within the scope that is the Hindu identity. Maybe to put it in another manner, I can say Hindu identity is the cognitions, thought currents, and understandings we carry and practice in our life which have originated from and are rooted in Hindu Dharma. So coming to some understanding of Hindu identity, why is it that we are still not commanding respect from society? Well, this is not an entirely true statement, as you might already know, whilst being one of the smallest demographics in various countries around the world, as Hindus we are one of the biggest contributors back to our societies, as entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, engineers, and I'm not just trying to be stereotypical here, this is generally what it is like. Highly qualified, with extremely low rates of crime. But why is it the case we do not confidently wear this identity like a badge of honor? Why such a large case of self-doubt, self-hatred, and self-denial within the Hindu community? Fundamentally, it boils down to a case of I don't know. Not having understanding or the context of why we are doing what we are doing when it comes to the Vedic and Hindu tradition. addition to this, there has been a fear of being labeled, oh, a Hindu. Please understand, for almost the past millennia, there's been a systematic attack on our spiritual infrastructure, hardware if you will, our temples, libraries, institutions. Towards the end of this period, when the British rule was in place, there were systematic attacks on our spiritual software, meaning our Vedic Gurukul education, our knowledge transfer mechanisms, our Guru Shishya Parampara, bringing in foreign concepts of caste, leaving us with a system that made Hindus fit to be servants of the British Raj. Hindu Dharma is the backbone of Bharat. Once you take that away from Bharat, essence of Bharat is lost. Because we are uninformed, because we do not know, because we have been fed lies, false history and fake news, unfortunately, being Hindu has resulted in many people carrying an inferiority complex. At one point, our GDP contributed to almost 48% of the world's GDP. Please be very clear. Bharat could only contribute in such a manner because we were practicing Hindus. We were able to treat any disease through Ayurveda yoga because we were practicing Hindus. We were able to map advanced astronomical calculations and technologies because we were practicing Hindus. So this begs the question, how do we move towards commanding respect with the Hindu identity? Fundamentally, what is commanding respect? It is nothing but someone cognizing your capability to inspire, enrich, or manifest a reality of theirs. Let me give a crude example. Why do sometimes people value the rich? Because they view them as a possibility to create their own reality. Whether it is they physically getting the money, or it is that they're just fantasizing about their wealth, they see it as a possibility for them. By being able to manifest and create the reality of not just one, but many, naturally we will be able to command the respect of the whole society. Let us take wealth as an example for Hindus. The work ethic, the sanskars, the behavior which we have taken for granted and even unknowingly passed down many generations has put many Hindus in the position of highly efficient wealth generators. Amongst other things, due to unfortunate case of chronic capitalism, shall we say, it has infected the original dharmic cognition. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean the idea of hoarding, trying to be possessive, rather than owning and being responsible, feeling possessive about this wealth. When we bring ourselves back to the dharmic cognition, looking through the Hindu lens of wealth generations, we default back to a culture of contributing. One of the prevalent thought currents to do with wealth: create wealth with 100 hands and share with 1,000 hands. This is nothing but the attitude of contribution. Similarly, when we realign ourselves back to the original dharmic cognitions, naturally we will excel in those areas. Whether it is to do with wealth, whether it's to do with wealth, whether it's offering annadan, food donation, how to realign ourselves back to the original roots in Hindu Dharma, so that we can become an identity that continues to contribute and automatically command respect. Pramana, references or experiences. I'll explain this, the word pramana, in a context to do with yoga. But before I get to that, once you have the experience and you can map the experience back to an original pramana or reference, two things happen. One, you don't dilute the tradition. Two, you gain context. See, in regards to diluting the tradition, the perfect example is yoga. When I bend the body, I might have some satori experience, a glimpse of maybe a thoughtless space. It would be wrong for me to go to someone and say, you bend your body like this also, and you also experience satori. Because had I referenced back to Shastra Pramana, scriptural references, and Aptam Pramana, commentaries by exemplaries in the field, for example, Patanjali, Matsyendranath, Goraknath, I would have seen a certain vegetarian lifestyle is required. I should not be consuming alcohol. When I follow all of this, then this experience is expected. When the alignment is not there between your experience and what the Shastra or the Pramanas proclaim, that is when dilution happens. Some people, they like beer, some people like yoga. What's happened? They put the two together and made beer yoga. I'm sure most of you have seen this. It's an absolute shame because they are doing injury to their own body. See, the fruits of yoga is for everyone to share, but the roots are grounded in Vedic and Hindu tradition. When you have the context, why you are doing what you are doing, you will have a tremendous confidence in yourself. When you have the references and understandings about your practice of yoga, or when you sit for a Ganapati Homa to remove obstacles, or you're offering a yajna for the environment, when you have the clarity about the cause of the experience that is supposed to happen, naturally there will be confidence in the actions you take. Yes, following? When you have clarity of why you're doing what you're doing, you'll have confidence in the actions you're doing, you're taking. And because all the actions and contexts are rooted in Hindu Dharma, your Hindu identity, you will not only be benefiting yourself, you will also be benefiting the surroundings around you. It's like you have no choice but to command respect because you are Hindu. To command respect with Hindu identity is absolutely possible, achievable, and for a sustainable future, it's a necessity. Commanding respect is basically our ability to contribute back to society. Cognitions grounded in Hindu Dharma by their very nature is contributing. All we have to do is identify our blind spots and realign ourselves. We can realign by mapping back to our Shastra Pramana. Yes, there might be a lot of work to do, but absolutely no doubt about bringing the spiritual legitimacy back to Hindu Dharma. It is happening and will happen. Tadastu.
Thank you, Murli, for that wonderful breakdown and workflow process to realign and rediscover our roots and our own respect. So our next presenter is Sushri Prashaanta Singh, who's from Trinidad and Tobago, studying to be a doctor of dental surgery. She is a two-time under-18 national champion in archery with a national record. She got her black belt from a world-renowned Japanese master and won a medal for Trinidad and Tobago in the Pan American Karate Championship. She was awarded Most Outstanding Karateka and won 10 gold and 7 silver medals, so do not mess with her. Wow. She is a trained lifeguard and has been learning Bharatiya Odissi dance since the age of 2 at the Kala Kendra Mandir. She was also a nominee for the National Youth Awards. Give it up for...
Namaskar. I will be speaking on my issues in my Hindu community, my personal experience as a Hindu in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as Hindu Dharma and sports. What I notice about my Hindu community is that the number of Hindus is dwindling because of a lack of interest in learning about Hindu Dharma, with many opting for a Western lifestyle. Our youth are not encouraged and guided by parents to mold themselves as Hindus. Additionally, family emphasis is placed on acquiring an education for their survival. The reason that culture wouldn't put food on that table. The result is our young graduates whom we expect to protect our dharma, are the least knowledgeable because they don't see any value in it. This also impacts on emotional health, as depression and anxiety are on the rise. The total human being is not developed when religion and culture are not included in a person's development. As a young Hindu living in Trinidad and Tobago, I am continuously bombarded by negative media, discrimination from non-Hindus, and pressure from my Hindu peers to engage in activities not conducive to my values as a Hindu youth. Despite all these adversities, our leaders have fought for us to have a national holiday for Diwali. Diwali has risen above the boundaries of ethnicity and is embraced by all. Hindu youth camps are conducted by Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh. Its objective is to provide knowledge and skills so that our Hindu youths would be equipped and competent to protect Sanatan Dharma. The Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha has built Hindu primary and secondary schools since 1952. The number of schools has expanded to include secondary schools built under the past government administrations. There are minor organizations also involved in education: the Arya Pratinidhi Sabha, Swaha, and Kabir Panth. The Chinmaya mission has also incorporated learning Sanskrit and Hinduism as subjects in the core curriculum. It would be heartening to know that our Hindu schools have consistently produced the top students at both primary and secondary levels. Just last year, Lakshmi Girls Hindu College received the President's Medal for the 3rd year in a row under the business and management field. Within the last few years, we have seen Hindu organizations acquiring media houses. The Mahasabha has created TV and Radio Jagrati. Swaha has acquired IETV, also Sankhya TV, a Hindu family enterprise. Moreover, the Diwali Nagar is also present where major Hindu events take place. In terms of culture, doubles. Tubara, curry chana, and chutney is our national dish. The Kiss company, the leading company in the baking industry, is making the Rani Roti brand that is available in supermarket shelves throughout the country. This reflects the impact of our presence in the national community. Our festivals are still observed in the mandars. While the traditional ones have remained, Ramlila, Phagwa, Diwali, others have been resuscitated, such as Ganesh Utsav and Ganga Dashahara. The Hindu Prachar Kendra has also introduced Ganga Dhara, where 2,000 Tirath sites in India have been merged and consecrated into the bedrock of a North Coast river, establishing this site as a place of Tirath 25 years ago. Additionally, Pichakari, a forum within Phagwa, which provides a platform for social commentaries in songs, music, and dance, as well as Balramdila, which provides a Hindu education while developing skills and personal growth for children within a Hindu context. On a personal note, I know I wouldn't have been able to achieve so much without the guidance of Hindu Dharma. At a tender age, my parents persuaded me to perform sadhana twice a day. This ensured that I was focused, calm, and resilient for all my competitions. In planning for a national competition, I would begin preparations 3 months in advance, and for an international competition, an entire year ahead of the due date. I would wake up from 3:30 a.m., freshen up, and begin my sadhana at the time of Brahma Muhurta, that is 4 a.m. After this, at sunrise, I would begin preparations for my respective competitions. I grew up as a vegetarian, meaning that my source of protein and energy is legumes and fruits. When I won my various competitions, my parents taught me to offer my medals, awards, or trophies to God, our respective teacher, parents, and guru. Additionally, I would attend my functions in saris and bindis, showing off that I am a proud Hindu. My participation in Odissi dance also assisted me in winning my competitions because it developed my upper body for archery and my lower limbs for karate. would bow to my bow before any archery competition and use yantras and magnetotherapy to assist me while shooting. We would use poets in competitions. For example, Arjuna Chal, which meant that just like Arjuna taking aim for the bird's eye during his training, I too had to make my every arrow count. All these led to my achievements in archery and karate, thus making an impact on my country. Moreover, my parents played a crucial role in my all-round development by instilling Hindu values on an everyday basis. In conclusion, while I am continuing to develop, being Hindu has shaped me into who I am today, the best version of myself, and given me the tools to understand myself and the world around me. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Prashaanta. I hope that we can have half or a tenth of your determination, and perhaps we will all achieve our goals and dreams, especially regarding strengthening our identity. So we will open up the session at this point for questions and answers. I believe that we do have a mic runner over here, so raise your hands and you will... Yeah, why don't you guys come up here actually, and then line up. Let's all line up over here.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you, everyone, for these wonderful speeches. Worthy and Sushri, can you guys hear me?
Hold it closer.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Thar.
Where do you come from?
I come from Seattle and born and raised in Boston. Your presentations in particular made me think of the following. Actually, all of your presentations did. In some sense, teaching these values and keeping them alive for us as well as, say, our future children is hard. We want to, but it's difficult to find the time to bring the passion and all the other things that we have to do in life. And I was thinking about what are ways that we can make it easy for people who are passionate like us to transmit this to our children, to people we care about, as well as to make it easier for people who aren't as passionate to make it more accessible. One idea that came to my mind was I'd love to create a TV channel or video, a collection of YouTube videos that you could just play in the background so that you don't have to do the teaching. TV does the teaching. Just one idea, but I'm curious what you think. Is it important to make it easier, and how can we do it?
Is it Parth? Siddharth. Yeah. So Siddharth, with that one, when you said you're finding it difficult, what's sort of stopping you?
It's not this. Well, what's difficult is that we have lots of other commitments in life, right? I think some of the ones that are raised, many of us are working professionals, studying, and want to build professional careers. And part of pursuing this in a world that's not exactly
Okay. See, from my understanding, day to day Vedic lifestyle that I follow. For example, wake up in the morning, just like I brush my teeth, I'll go into puja. See, it's become a lifestyle. I don't see that Vedic following Sanatana Dharma is separate to my life. You see, both are existing as in the same thing. It's like, it is my life. So I don't see the difference. But when you're asking, how can we make it easier, making it more accessible, maybe first it's important to understand what we're not sure about. See, when you start with, okay, what are the things I don't know or I want to know? You can start from there. And so then if it is like, if you want to know about certain topics, maybe ancient sciences, Biomanika Shastra, whatever it is, you can choose to look at it in that own time where you're saying, oh, it's going to be busy. Like when it comes to, for me personally, I just see it as once you stop having the cognition that it's a separate from my life, then automatically it becomes easy to incorporate into life. That's what I see. It might not be what you're wanting to hear, but that's how I sort of see it.
So if I may just add to that, so I'm by no means a mother, but I have the good fortune of having some friends who are parents to toddlers. And some of the really cool things I've seen are small swaps. So I have a good friend who has a 3-year-old son, and from when he was a baby, she started taking him, instead of to just the normal toddler classes, she'd take him to baby massage and baby yoga, right? So there were mantras played in the background from a very young age. As he grew older, when she needed to calm him down, it wasn't the naughty step, it would be let's chant Om together. And she would create an environment in the home that would just calm him right down, which was just lovely to see. And even now, it still works like magic. She also swapped out the resources within the house. So all the books that he has are related to our Shastras, to our Puranas, to the Mahabharata, to the Ramayana. The cards that they have around the house, he would go around doing JJ to all these different avatars that were scattered around the home. His teddy bears are all Hanumanji and Ganpati Baba. So there are small swaps that we can do, I think, from what I've been able to see, that make things easier, because you're going to do some of these things anyway. You're going to buy children soft toys. Why not attach a story to it when you read them their bedtime story that's related to our history? And if they grow up in that environment, the next step would be satsang. So have friends, have an environment that they can get absorbed into, where they can pick up those sanskars, which takes the pressure off you as well.
And I think I'll add just very briefly that nothing of value comes easily. So you do have to make that choice to commit, and you do have to follow through and develop those muscles of practice and commitment in order to really benefit from that implementation of what you're seeking in your life.
Namaste, my name is Nikunj Trivedi. I'm from New Jersey. First of all, I want to congratulate all of you for coming out here and inspiring all of us. These were fantastic examples of your work and your personal experiences and stuff. Having been involved in Hindu student activities for quite a long time, one thing that I do face, and I want to hear your perspective on this, it's like it's great, and all of you are unique. When you look at tens of thousands of students out there, you guys are like 5, in that sense, right? So now, how do you translate 5 to 5,000 to 50,000? What strategies, what are some of the suggestions that you have for the Hindu students, the Hindu youth out there to take back from this conference and be firm in their Hindu identity?
So from an organizational perspective?
Organizational and personal. So like how is the NHSF or Hindu students in New Zealand or in Trinidad and Tobago, how do you guys as an organization or a group deal with these challenges? Maybe we all have the same challenges. That's number one. And personally, how are you dealing with it?
Right. Good question. So if we start off organizationally, so one of the key things, or what forms the bedrock of our work in the UK with the National Hindu Student Forum, I guess it really boils down to its personal relationships. We can preach, we can come up with amazing strategies, but fundamentally, if those relationships do not exist at the grassroots level, nothing doing. So we have a network of, almost we've got 46, 47 universities across the UK, so that's almost half. And each and every one of those universities will get a visit from the national committee. So we aim to do 2 visits per term. So that translates into 4 visits per year. And those aren't just turning up at an RT event or turning up to their flagship ball. It's sitting down and discussing with them what their hopes and their aspirations are, but also adding that 10% more. And that's all we aim to do, add that 10% more in that direction, where we can create an inclusive environment. We were fortunate enough to actually launch a theme to help navigate our activities. So some of the things that we've introduced to really counteract, I guess, that inferiority complex that Ravi alluded to earlier. We've got students who come to our events that say, I'm not Hindu. Or they'll say things like, I'm Hindu but I'm not religious, I'm more spiritual. Or I'm Hindu but I don't worship cows. And these are things that we face every single day. So that first step is of instilling pride. And we can only instill pride if we can serve up facts, serve up history in a way that's digestible and palatable. So some of the initiatives that have been launched in the UK are things like Sanskrit Word of the Month. So every month we have an Acharya who is based in Switzerland, who we've had the good fortune of becoming good friends with, who takes a common word such as Bhagwan, such as Guru, and relates it back etymologically. So, did we know that the word Guru is related to the word gravity? So gravity comes from the word Guru. And with these small facts or these tidbits and these explanations, we're able to equip young Hindus across the country to say, did you know? Gravity comes from the word Guru. Guru is a Sanskrit word, and that's part of my ancestry. And slowly, slowly, we start to build an element of pride, which then, I guess, gives way to curiosity of who am I? What is my history? What are the different philosophies that exist within Hindu Dharma? Because I can be somebody who sees the smallest atom as God and still be a Hindu, or actually I could be Dvaitian and really believe as God, or within a different form of consciousness. I can be any of those things, but I can still be Hindu, and there's a unique reality there for the Hindu students to realize, which I don't think is quite there in the consciousness. So there are small steps that are being taken to instill pride as the first step in terms of how we own our identity, and alongside that, and I'll be brief because I'm sure we have to hear from a global perspective, but alongside owning our identity, it's taking back things that have been owned by others on campus. So across the UK, meditation as a practice is owned by modern or Buddhist societies. Yogasan is owned by the Yoga Society, and typically we don't see anyone brown in these classes. But what about the philosophy? What about the other limbs of yoga? Where are they? So we're encouraging collaborations where the Hindu society can partner with the Yoga Society. So we're not saying start something separately, we're saying work together. Right? And let's share the philosophy, let's share the theory, hand in hand, side by side with the practice. And through that, we reach out to those that may not traditionally look Hindu because they're not Indian, but they can still be Hindu by sharing the same values that we do. And so through that, we're exploring yoga, we're exploring pranayama, we're exploring dhyan. And that's to very much reinstill that pride in our heritage, but also owning our heritage. And that, again, answers another question. So I'm sure it's true in the US and globally, but we're experiencing a rise in mental health crises, right? Suicide, male suicide are going every year across the UK, and universities are now starting to track this. Where is that safe space where students can come and just take that moment to go, you know what, it's okay. I didn't get that 99%, my mom's probably going to get mad at me, but I'm okay. Tomorrow is a new day, you know? Oh, I'm not as pretty as the person next to me, but that's okay. I'm a good human being. That pause, that moment to reflect, can we provide those spaces that allow for that? And so we're actually looking to open up our environment, not just to those who would traditionally come to a Hindu Sok, but to everyone. And through that, we can actually translate or articulate what Hindu Dharma is to a wider audience. So those are some of the things that we're looking to do through our relationships at a ground level across universities.
To what Drishti said, right? Back home in Trinidad, we have the Hindu Swayamsevas on camps, and we're experiencing problems with Hindus not being strong enough. They're not informative of who they are. So we started straying away from sessions that just talked randomly about specific aspects of Hindu Dharma, and we started pinpointing questions that we are usually asked. So some of the questions that were asked are, why are we worshipping a stone when it's a lingam? Why do we throw water which is really Chahawi and Jal. So we started answering those questions during these sessions so that they're more informed and they understand better about themselves.
I think ultimately it's a marketing problem in one way, and I see the other problem being that when did Dharma stop becoming refreshed and renewed and basically in that cycle of reincarnation reborn to meet the needs of our generation? So what are we talking about, for example, hot issues like abortion, like issues that the youth are essentially facing? What is the dharmic perspective on the LGBTQ community? How can we take Dharma forward and apply it to the current circumstances, to the current time? And I don't see our acharyas, our institutions, doing that sort of work. I see a kind of romanticizing of the past and just looking kind of backwards at what we were instead of what we could be in the future, and that requires change. And I think that ultimately push is going to come to shove, and we're going to have to face the implications of not keeping up, of not doing that hard work, of being in a consistently renewing and changing state. So I think it's ultimately now up to all of us to do that manthan, that samudra manthan, that spiritual churning within us, and bring Hinduism back to relevance so that we can make it meaningful again for people. And I mean, look at how the West has made it meaningful for them. They've taken yoga, and not only have they benefited tremendously, psychologically, physiologically, but they've also created tremendous wealth out of it. So how did we miss that boat? Is there any way that we can, get somewhere closer to that? So is there anybody else who wants to field that question? You can stand in line. All right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't quite understand your question.
Do you mind repeating your question so that the whole audience?
Sure. So the question was that how do we establish a personal relationship when somebody isn't connected? So the field that we're in, we're at campuses, right? So we're at universities. The best advice is we just turn up and we just talk. And that is really it. We turn up, we make ourselves present. And then through that, we get to know the people that we work with, and we try and establish a commonality. Right? I may not support the same football team or the same soccer team as them, but I will talk to them about it so that they become comfortable, they become safe. And through that, they will reveal more about themselves, and then we can link that commonality back to what we share, back to values that we have in common. And believe me, you'll always find one.
And just to add, as an aspiring, as an aspiring psychologist and psychotherapist, it's not what you're trying to communicate or relate, but it's how you relate. So it's the quality of the relationship that basically decides, the outcome. And if you show up, really show up fully, non-judgmentally, unconditionally accepting, that is more than enough, regardless of how many years you've been disconnected from the tradition. I think you said 7 generations, and even though that sounds like a lot, the quality of that connection, which ultimately is what Hinduism is all about, because you cut through the ego and you bare yourself, whether it's to Bhagavan or to whatever your relationship is there. And then that's how you show up, and hopefully we can all be exemplars of that. All right, next question.
I'm Sushri. I've come from Darwin, Australia, over here. So I'm going to address the point made by Drishti in regards to articulating the Hindu identity. Now, I'm just going to give personally what I had the opportunity to do. I'm in the army in Australia, so being a Hindu within the Royal Australian Army may not necessarily be, easy. I'll just say that. However, I did have the opportunity last year, and my sergeant told me to give a presentation in front of the unit on a topic I was very passionate about. So I gave a presentation on the arts and sciences of the Vedas, and in that I present about the various aspects of beliefs in Hindu Dharma, whether it be the monotheistic, the polytheistic, the animistic, the agnostic, and the atheistic aspects of it. Went through every single Vedas. I even gave him a line from the Lagunyasam as well. And I'll tell you this, 40 minutes it went for, and the entire unit was impressed about it. And mind you, they weren't Hindus either, but the fact that my OC got happy about it and even nominated me for a deployment in itself showcased you that it can be done. So I think to answer your question, it's more about whether you're willing to do it to get out of this shyness, because I've even been told by my parents as well that you probably shouldn't go out with a vibhuti or something to work, and I'm like, just watch me, I do it, and everyone there, enjoyed. No one else mindset. To be honest, I'll tell you that I have full 100% support in my workplace. So it's all about having that courage to do it, because the one thing that I've learned within the army is the 4 values: the courage, initiative, respect, and teamwork. So I'm using the courage to utilize the articulation of Hindu Dharma in front of everyone, and I would strongly recommend everyone here follow that path as well.
So how am I going to follow up after that? I just want to say, first of all, so I have no questions. I just want to say that I really absolutely appreciate you guys tapping into your inner emotions and coming up here and doing a presentation like this. It's not easy to tap into your inner emotions and do that. Second, I want to say Drishti's speech, I want to say Varun's speech was absolutely one of the best speeches I've ever heard in my life. I've listened to Alan Watts, Jyoti Krishnamurti, etc. And this girl's speech was so good, this woman's speech was so good. They told me not to say girl. Anyway, but, and I have to say that. And I do have to emphasize a point, which is that there is a certain type of shame that we do have being Hindus. For some reason, it's instilled in us. And you guys pointed that out very nicely. There is a type of shame, like, okay, the Abrahamic traditions come up to us and they say, what's your book? Why do we have to answer like, what's your book? We should say, what are your books? So I just wanted to say that there's a certain type of shame that's there, and we need to, does that say 0 minutes? I can barely even tell. It's like 0 minutes. No, but okay, anyway. So I just want to say thank you guys, and we should overcome this shame. Just saying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Emil. As much as we appreciate the comments and we do welcome them, please do keep them brief. We do have about 10 more minutes, and I'd also request the speakers to keep their answers brief. Thank you.
It's a question. So I want to ask, in this era when everything is going very westernized, I came here to this country, like North America, 2.5 years ago, but now at my home I've got a little one. But you used a word called guru recently, right? So, but not everybody understands those words, right? So how can we create that culture so that students or anyone can understand those words and the significance behind it? Because you don't have any institutions right now here. So what is your say on that? My name is Arun, and I'm from Vancouver, Canada.
I think in regards to institutions, I think institutions are there. That's existing, especially if you're interested in Guru, Shishri, Sampradaya and all of that. I think. Oh, okay, the language.
we have Sanskrit and Hindi, so how can we take it more in depth with the children?
To learn Sanskrit and other languages
For the children.
for the children.
Is
Okay.
this where I can put in a cheeky plug and say follow NHSF on Facebook and YouTube?
So ultimately, I think what you're referring to is the non-translatability of Sanskrit and Sanskriti, the Vedic culture. So I think that we have to prominently, confidently use Sanskrit and be able to explain the dharmic paradigm that it contains. So when people look at guru, right, if you look it up in the dictionary, which it is now in the Oxford American Dictionary, if you use it in popular culture, guru just means someone who's an expert of something. And when we use it, can we counteract that confidently enough and put our kind of structure around it back? And I think that we need to have the... Okay.
Few points, if you don't mind. Absolutely precise, just 3 points. I studied
Can
in
you
India.
please stand up?
Can you put your hands up, please?
States. So I understand the differences in the education there. As good as private schools.
We apologize for the technical difficulties.
Alright, anyways, on that note, thank you guys so much for coming to this event. Thank you, speakers, for an amazing session. We're now wrapping up session 1.